Hey y'all, today we're making sourdough cinnamon roll focaccia. Okay, so I've made focaccia before on the channel and I did not use a sourdough recipe. So if you don't do sourdough, I'm going to link the other video for you and you can use the same dough recipe from that video. But for this video, what you need is 2 cups of warm water, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and then 1 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast, okay? This is not the kind you have to let sit and bubble. This is the kind that you just put in there and then you can just keep on mixing, okay? So then to that, we're gonna add 4 1/4 cups of plain old all-purpose flour. I might have even used bread flour for this, but either one will work just fine. So then you're going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt, and then I'm adding in 200 grams, I had to think for a second, 200 grams of sourdough discard, okay? And I usually get mine out of the refrigerator, put it in a little bowl, weigh it out, and then let it sit on the counter just for a little bit to where it's not quite so cold, because when it's super cold, it's kind of hard to work with. So I let mine just, sit on the counter and hang out for a minute. Then you're just gonna mix this. You don't have to use a stand mixer, but mix it until it is completely combined. And this is what it's going to look like, y'all. It's super goopy and sticky, and it's just a mess. And that's what it's supposed to look like, okay? So then we're going to oil. Y'all know I say oil. But you're going to put I put cooking spray in a bowl, and you're going to dump your dough over into that bowl, and then we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap, or you can cover it with a bowl or whatever you want to cover it with, and then you're going to let that rise for about 2 to 3 hours or until it doubles in size. You see my bowl is nice and full. So now we're just going to remove the plastic. It's still going to be sticky and it's going to be really, really jiggly. Okay, this is not going to be a firm dough. If you've never made focaccia before, it's not a firm dough. And some recipes are stickier than others. This recipe is quite a bit stickier than the other recipe I used, but either one of these will work, just depending on if you're using the sourdough discard or if you're just going to use yeast for yours. So now what I'm going to do, this is a 9x13 pan. I melted 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to just brush this butter all over the bottom of my pan, all over the sides. Make sure that you get it really good and coated, because like I've said 15 times already, I know I've said it and I'll probably say it 15 more. The dough is super sticky, okay? So we don't want it to stick when we cook it. And then I dip my little rubber spatula in the butter to kind of help me break the dough away from the sides of that bowl. You don't necessarily have to do that. It just works better for me, so that's what I do. So you're going to dump this in your pan, and then I'm just gently using my little rubber spatula to kind of get it to spread itself out in the bottom of a pan. You can see I didn't go all the way to the edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to loosely cover this. See, I'm just sitting it on top. I'm not sealing it. And we're going to let that rise for about another 2 hours. I know this seems like a lot of time. It is a lot of rise time, but it's not a lot of time that you actually have to be hands-on. So you need to make this. So what I'm doing now, I melted 5 tablespoons of butter. We're going to make the topping for this, the cinnamon part, okay? So I'm adding to my 5 tablespoons of melted butter, 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, okay? So we're going to add that in, and then you're just going to whisk this up until you get everything really, really good and just completely combined. And I didn't say this before, but while your dough is rising in the pan, go ahead and preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So now we have to do the fun part of focaccia, okay? We are going to dimple it. And I'll tell you the difference. I dampened my hands, and look how bad my hands are sticking to this dough. In a perfect world, I would have taken this out of the video so you wouldn't have seen my struggle, but I did this because I wanted y'all to know that if this happens to you, it's okay. But you see, it has stuck to my hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my hands really, really good, and that solved the problem. Okay, so just make sure your hands are very wet. When you're using a focaccia recipe that calls for oil, you oil your hands up. And so, of course, you're not going to stick. But this one, I'm not using oil. I'm using more butter in the things that I'm doing. So my hands were sticky, but just make sure they're pretty wet. So once you get it dimpled, you're going to pour your topping, pour it all over the top, and we're going to put this in the oven 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes, okay? So this is what it looks like when it comes out. You can see all the little craters and the little valleys and things in there. All that cinnamon and sugar soaks down into there. Y'all, that's why this bread is so good. Okay, so we're going to let that cool for a minute, and we're going to get our glaze together. So what you're going to need for this is a cup of powdered sugar, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and then you're going to start with 2 tablespoons of milk. It does not take a lot of liquid to make this, so start with 2 tablespoons of milk. I do go back and add at least 1 more tablespoon, maybe 2, I can't remember, but just keep adding. But like I said, you're going to think it's not going to mix in, but it will. Just keep mixing, and that milk, you know, the powdered sugar, I don't know, it's magic, y'all. But just keep mixing it until it gets to the consistency that you want yours to be. So once you've cooled down your bread just a little bit, you're just going to pop it out of your pan, and I'm putting it on this cooling rack and on a cookie sheet just so I don't make a mess, okay? And I didn't want to cut it in my 9x13 pan and scratch my pan all up, but you could cut it in your pan if you wanted to. So I like to make my glaze a little bit thin like this to just kind of drizzle it over the top so that it gets down in all those little nooks and crannies. But if you wanted to leave it thick and just spread it on like a cinnamon roll, you could certainly do that. So anytime I watch somebody cook something like this, especially a bread product, I want to see what the inside looks like. Because I'm like, I want to know what it's going to look like on the inside when I cook it. So I'm going to show y'all what it looks like on the inside. You see where all those little dips were, where that cinnamon and sugar soaked down into our bread? Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, if you've never made focaccia this way, or if you've never made focaccia at all, you have to try this. It is like the perfect brunch recipe. You know, because it's really it's a lot of steps, so you can't really, unless you're going to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, you're not probably going to get this ready for breakfast. But you could make it the day before and then heat it up. But y'all, this stuff, look how soft. It is fluffy and squishy, and it is so, so good. That buttery bottom that we have there, I don't know, y'all. Look, now I want to go make another one, but it is so good. I hope that y'all want to make something like this. It's a little bit different. Yes, it's a little bit more, you know, time consuming, I guess, than a lot of simple recipes, but it is so, so worth it. So make sure that you give this a try. Okay, that is all I've got for y'all today, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.